Good evening and welcome to this latest edition of Elephant TV, the conversations that we've been having. And once again, it's an honor and a pleasure to have my friend, Professor Makau Mutua, all the way from the State University of New York at Buffalo in New York, joining us. Professor Makau Mutua, as you know, is a leading public intellectual here in Kenya, distinguished professor at SUNY. He's also the Margaret W. Wong Professor at the Buffalo Law School. And Professor Makau is also founder and chairman of the Kenya Human Rights Commission right here in Kenya. So he's been engaged in the Kenyan political milieu and especially in the human rights field for a very long time. And I think at one point had to head into exile for his troubles. Karibu, Prof, all the way from New York. Nice to have you once again.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. And like I like to say, I live on two continents simultaneously. I live both here and there, and my heart and soul is in both places, and so I'm very pleased to join you.
Great. I'll get right into it. I think people, viewers really enjoyed the comments that and the perspectives that you shared with us a month ago now, and I wanted to follow up on that. But first of all, come to something that that is really right down your alley as a constitutional lawyer, human rights lawyer, Prof. The 28th of August was the Katiba Day, 10 years since we promulgated the Constitution in 2010. And I just wanted to just ask you to get your take. There's lots of debate here in Kenya. People talking of the Building Bridges Initiative, changing the Constitution. There are lots of options being presented. But I just wanted to ask you, what do you think the new Constitution, 10 years later, what has it delivered to us as Kenyans? And what still, what hasn't gone as it should have and still needs to be fixed?
Well, first of all, I think we Kenyans ought to be very proud of themselves for having brought into fruition the 2010 Constitution, which is a decade ago. If you survey the African political landscape, you will see the wreckage of states that are there. You will also see a lot of dysfunction around Kenya and deep into the continent, whether it's north, south, or even west. And so I think the first thing that we've really got to be very proud of is that we managed to bring forth what's a very progressive document. This is a very, very important achievement. A constitution usually has two facets to it. The first facet, obviously, is the values or the norms in the Constitution, the intellectual, framework of the Constitution. And in that regard, it was a remarkable achievement. It's progressive. It goes beyond your boilerplate liberal Constitution because there's aspects of economic and social rights in it which are not normally included in these constitutions, which tend to go primarily on civil and political rights. And so we have that in a document. That's a big achievement. And especially when you consider the fact that the Constitution was approved by over two-thirds of Kenyans. It gives you a kind of a map of where Kenyans were at that period after fighting Mr. Moi for more than a quarter century. So that's one. It's just a normative achievement. That's huge. I know people don't think that's important, but you can't achieve, but you cannot implement what you don't have.
Yes.
So first of all, you must have it, and then try to implement it.
Yes.
Now the purpose or the objective of constitutions is not so that they may sit on a shelf or there may be artifacts of admiration because of the language in which they are wordsmithed.
Yes.
They must be implemented. And that is a very, very arduous task. If you look at older states which are more established, like the United States, over 200 years old, you're going to see that it's taken the U.S. a very long time to iron out its own constitutional framework. You know, so 10 years is a drop in the bucket in terms of implementing a constitution. It's a drop in the ocean, so to speak. So I think a lot of people are impatient with the pace of implementation.
Yes.
Partly because you know, people think that it should be like open sesame. You know, you open the door and everything is there overnight.
Yes.
I think once you achieve the document itself, then you must. Then the political elite, but also the Wananchi themselves, must learn how to perform the Constitution.
Yes.
So there's a question of performance.
Yes.
Of the Constitution. It is one thing to talk about it; it's one thing to perform it.
Yes.
And I think it's in the performance of the Constitution where I think there have been questions.
Yes.
And those questions have been raised primarily because we think that the particular intellectual submission of the ruling elites in particular to the document itself is really not been there.
Yeah.
It's not been there. Because, I mean, you have the president, for example, the head of state, you know, flouting the Constitution against, you know, court orders. You have rampant corruption. You know, you have stealing of elections. You have all sorts of problems there. You have devolution of corruption in the counties and so on and so forth. So you have all these issues. You have ethnic antagonism. It's not been resolved. You know, so these are the issues that are there. And these are the kinks, I think, that have to be ironed out.
You know, you mentioned corruption there, Prof, and I'd like to just seek your comment. I mean, one of the things that seems to have returned a semblance of outrage to Kenyan political discourse has been the many allegations that have emerged around corruption and misappropriation, misspending of resources that have been borrowed and granted to Kenya to mitigate the the coronavirus pandemic in Kenya. And this is shocked people, it's angered people, and there's a sense of outrage I had always felt that, you know, for the last, especially the past 9 years, Kenyans have become fairly numb to corruption. I mean, we have a scandal a day in the papers, but this particular one has really touched Kenyans, is my opinion. I wanted to get your sense of, you know, your take on, you know, what they're calling the COVID billionaires here, that has consumed not only the chattering classes, but it's also being discussed very much by Kenyans, even at the grassroots.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to forgive me for being a little skeptical about this particular outrage that's being expressed, because I think Kenyans are inured to corruption.
Yes.
And so I'm not quite sure whether the so-called COVID, well, not so-called, the COVID heist.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'm not so sure whether it is not simply the outrage, the corruption outrage of the month.
Okay.
You know, so that tomorrow people are going to move on.
Yes.
You know, when you look at the long stretch of history,
yes,
and I think history is the best predictor
yes,
of the future.
Yes.
You're going to see
yes,
that scandal after scandal.
Yes.
You know, Kenyans, you know, raise alarms, their heads explode,
yes,
they get upset.
Yes.
You know, very quickly they settle back down, and they embrace the same people who stole from them.
Yes.
You know, so for example, I think during the break you were just telling me that you've been to Central Kenya, and there, you know, there appears to be some attraction to one William Ruto.
Yep.
Mr. William Ruto is perhaps the poster child for corruption in Kenya.
Yes.
So how can the same people,
Yes.
and this is the dissonance that is there, the
Yes.
same people who are being stolen from,
Yes.
in terms of the COVID funds, how can the same people then embrace, the poster child of corruption?
Yes.
This tells you that there is something wrong
Yes.
in our, it's like people like to say our software.
Yes.
That it's almost like we have a Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
Where we love those who beat us and who imprison us and who enslave us.
Yes.
So I'm not quite so sure that this is going to change anything.
Yes.
But what I do think, however, is disgusting.
Yeah.
In the extreme.
Yes.
And just revolting to the human sort of conscience. Yes. Is the fact that much of these monies, I think in fact all of them, were donated.
Yes.
To Kenya.
Yes.
To really respond to the coronavirus pandemic. And so any political class that will steal from a dying man or dying woman for that matter, because this is what it is.
Yes.
Essentially, the COVID monies were meant to, stem the pandemic, to make sure that people will not die in large numbers. Anyone who can do that has no conscience, has no compunction.
Mm.
These are people who will serve their mothers down the river.
Yes.
So what it says to me, in terms of the constitutional framework that we were talking about earlier, what it says to me is that we have not submitted ourselves as a country, as a political elite, as a people.
Yes.
The values of the Constitution.
Yes.
It means that our state is a gangster state.
Yes.
Or what is being ruled by gangsters.
Yes.
Especially like kleptocracy, that that every time it hears the mention of $1 or the mention of a shilling,
yes,
it just thinks about how it is going to corral that dollar or that shilling, for its own aggrandizement.
Yes.
It never thinks of the public good.
Yes.
It never thinks of the national interest.
Yes.
And so this is Kenya's problem. I mean, I think that last time we were talking about stages of development.
Yes.
At some point, you think that a political class matures.
Yes.
Or starts to mature.
Yes.
And starts to think about the national interest.
Yes.
You can forgive the early state in from 64 to the late 60s, or a few missteps here and there. But after a while, you look around and you realize that you exist in a competitive globe.
Yes.
And that you got to shape up.
Yeah.
To be able to compete in the world.
Yes.
So you grow muscles, and muscles, means brain muscles. Muscles, it means intellectual, wherewithal. It means emotional intelligence as a political class.
Yeah.
So that you can develop this thing that we call the national interest.
Yes.
We don't have that.
No. Damning indictment there, Prof. If I can take you back just to sort of to get a perspective on certain narratives that have become dominant or prevalent in public discourse here around these issues, around the Constitution, around corruption, around all the realignments that are taking place politically. Number one is a deep state.
Yes.
Which I always thought was a concept that came to us out of Turkey initially. That there is, part of a combination of pure politicians, bureaucrats, securocrats in Kenya who wield power in the shadows and are beyond the law. They transcend even the Constitution. And I find it interesting that this terminology is used more and more often, together with the terminology of cartels, which is new in our sort of public discourse around corruption. You think of a cartel, you think of the kind of cartels they have in the drug cartels in Latin America, Mexico, Colombia, etc., who can hold entire states hostage. I just want to get your take on that. I mean, especially now during this time of realignments that are caused by the upcoming, the Kenyatta succession and the upcoming elections. Why why Kenyans are formulating their understanding of what's happening around them in these terms, and what the potential, what the implications are from where you're.
Yeah. So I think that actually applying the term deep state to Kenya is unfair to the term itself. Here, in other words, if you look at the etymology,
yes,
etymologically, the deep state idea,
yes,
is associated with Turkey, where a very powerful military,
yes,
the ascendance of power of Kemal Atatürk.
yes.
Yeah, so so the etymology of the deep state, has a particular sort of meaning in political science, and I think the application of the term itself is an insult to that term when you apply it to Kenya,
yes,
because its etymology is Turkish,
yes,
and it basically referred to the existence of a deep and united military that was committed to keeping the state secular against the traditions of Islam.
yeah,
that was the purpose, because the military knew that or thought that if it did not keep watch and guard over this backsliding into a theocracy, that the secular state of Turkey would be lost.
yes.
So there was a very noble purpose to it. Whether you like it or not, it's a purpose that can be defended.
Yes.
But so the term itself has devolved.
Yes.
When applied to ramshackle states like Kenya, and I call Kenya a ramshackle state deliberately.
Yes.
Yes. Ramshackle in the sense that it's a beggarly state.
Yes.
It's a state that begs and then voraciously steals what it begs.
Yes.
What could be more ramshackle than that?
Yes.
As for example, as exemplified in the COVID billions, which you borrow for your own people, but you steal it. So when applied to a place like Kenya, the deep state refers to a kleptocracy that is located fundamentally in the bureaucracy, and the military and the judiciary in collaboration with the political class. And the purpose of this kleptocracy is to develop what I call a self-protection racket, in which their purpose really is to fleece the country, to steal from Kenyans. This explains to you why, for example, in Kenya, you've never had a serious conviction of a high-ranking criminal. All these, heists covered with great fanfare. People go into sort of epileptic fits, and then the following day, the guy is out walking scot-free. So for example, today, when you look at the newspapers in Kenya and the press, what you're going to see is the DCI, Mr. Kenyatta, and the DPP, Mr. Haji, outdoing each other to say that they're going to be, bringing, criminals to book.
Yes.
This is all a charade, basically to hoodwink Kenyans that they are doing something about the COVID billionaires.
Yes.
I can assure you that 2 weeks from now, this subject will be forgotten. What was Mr. Kenyatta's response? Mr. Kenyatta's response was that, I want all these tenders to be put online.
Yes.
Or did he just wake up today and realize that there must be transparency? What is the IFMS system, the IFMS system? Isn't that system supposed to provide transparency for contracting and procurement in government?
Yes.
So it's a bizarre way to run a state.
Yes.
And then the other thing that is also interesting to me, John, is that Mr. Kenyatta's time is gone.
He's gone.
Yeah. The clock is run out. Literally run out.
Yes.
But he keeps on talking about, or people keep on talking about a cabinet reshuffle so he
Yes.
can pursue the big four agenda. He
Yes.
keeps on talking about the corruption, sort of the graft crusade that he's engaging in.
Yes.
But now a single person
Yes.
been brought to book.
Yes.
So when you look at that, you look at it and you say, well, there must be a deep state here.
Yeah.
And a self-protection racket in which all these people protect each other because they know that the webs that they have created, are like a spider's web.
Yeah.
You pull one thread and the whole thing collapses.
Unravels.
It's like the mafia.
Yeah.
You can't snitch on the mafia.
No.
You snitch on the mafia, they kill you.
Yes.
Yeah. So in Kenya, that's a deep state in my view, and this is what protects criminals in Kenya.
Yes.
High-ranking criminals. The only people who get convicted, as you know, John, are the chicken thieves.
That's true.
And the village, criminals, who
Yes.
really do not pose a danger to society.
Prof, if I can just segue a little bit and come back to the constitution, you mentioned the devolved corruption, which is something that we've witnessed. Devolution is possibly the most popular part, element or pillar of the current constitution. Is delivered tremendous resources to
Indeed.
parts of the country that never had it. But yes, we've seen devolved corruption as well. This is coming at a time now where we are having significant political realignments as 2022 approaches.
Yes.
And I just wanted to, because sitting from your big chair in New York, we'll have time at a later date to discuss other regions. But I wanted to get your take on developments in three regions in particular, which are important in Kenyan political life. The Rift Valley, the home province, of Mr. Ruto, Central Province, home province of outgoing President Kenyatta, but then also Ukambani, which you know very well, coming from Kitui, where we've seen quite a clearly things are moving. It is not surprising that realignments are taking place, but I'd like to get your take on what's happening and how it's all gonna pan out. Obviously, we can't predict to a T, but what explains some of the developments that we're seeing? I mean, there's lots of debate here in some of the opinion polls that are going around the president appears to have been unable to hand over to his handshake partner, Raila Odinga, the support of the Kikuyu community in the Central Province, and such other developments. I'll be keen to get your opinion on those three regions.
So the tragedy of our politics is that it's ethnically divided.
Yeah.
And atop each ethnic bloc sits a kingpin. This is really a product of the late Kenyatta state, perfected really under Moi, where where politics was organized along ethnic lines, and where kingpins were installed.
Yes.
In various parts of the country. And these kingpins are handed over from one to the next.
Yes.
What's very resilient is the subsistence of this subnational consciousness. Some people may call it pejoratively, tribal consciousness.
Yes.
Where people do as they're instructed by their ethnic kingpins.
Yes.
And this is particularly very true of groups that are homogeneous.
Yes.
Culturally.
Yes.
So, for example, the Kambas tend to be homogeneous ethnically.
Yes.
The Kikuyu are also ethnically homogeneous.
Yes.
The Luo as well. The Kalenjin are the more interesting group there because they are not homogeneous ethnically.
Yes.
But politically, for 24 years, they were the sort of ethnic group of incumbency, if you will.
Yes.
And fought that consciousness of an entitlement to power.
Yes.
The group that is in complete disarray, in my view, really is the Luya. And as we know very well, that is not really an ethnic group, so to speak.
Yes.
It's many groups in one.
Yes.
But my point is that you want to unclaw
yes.
the people from these ethnic kingdoms.
Yes.
Kambani, in central Kenya among Kikuyu and related groups, and then obviously among the people in the Rift, the Kalenjin.
Yes.
Something has to happen that has not happened in Kenya in the past.
Yes.
Not even 2002 did this happen, where Kenyans vote as individuals, not as members of a group.
Yes.
Something has to happen that convinces me that we've broken this demon of subnationalism, which is the biggest threat to political democracy, really. Is the biggest threat to political democracy, even in the United States, where white people generally vote for white people, black people generally vote for black people, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
It is an inbuilt flaw of democracy.
Yes.
It is just there, as I mentioned in our last conversation.
Yes.
So the question there is, even as people say that what's going to happen in central Kenya is that Kikuyu are going to go with Mr. Ruto, and polling seems to show that. I would caution people not to be so convinced about this particular hypothesis, because the people in central Kenya will do something they have never done in their history. They will actually vote for somebody else, who does not come from the community, and for whom their ethnic kingpin has not taught them to vote for.
Yes.
Yeah. This you are asking for too much. If that comes to pass, we can put down a bet. But Kambani, I would say, so in central Kenya, what I would say is that the community might go back to what I call factory settings.
Okay.
And the factory settings are basically, they go back to Mr. Kenyatta. Mr. Kenyatta tells them what to do, and they just do exactly as he says.
Yes.
Kambani is slightly different.
Yes.
I think, because of the fragmentation of the ground there.
Yes.
Partly because there's a feeling that there's a fatigue with Mr. Musyoka.
Yes.
And that he is not delivering. Now, whether that feeling is real or not, I do not know.
Yes.
What we do know is that political leaders in the region, all the three governors,
yes,
including Mr. Murama himself, Johnson Murama, who is now working with Mr. Ruto,
yes,
believe that Mr. Musyoka is very wicked, as a kingpin, and that he should be supplanted.
Yes.
Now this remains to be seen. Because where is he going to go? Is he going to become Mr. Odinga's running mate once again? Will the campus really buy that as a strategy? That for the third time he's going to play second fiddle? Is he going to play second fiddle to Mr. Ruto, who's clearly his political junior? That is not possible. Is he going to play second fiddle to Mr. Mudavadi, who was, I think, a vice president for only 30 days or 90 days, depending upon how you count? Is he going to play second fiddle to Mr. Gideon Moi, who still is in his incubation period, as a politician? So that doesn't really seem to work. And this is Mr. Musyoka's Achilles heel in Kambani. Now, having said that, I do not see a viable candidate from that region among the established politicians. I don't see such a person. The only way someone emerges from there is if there's a national consensus that this is a compromise candidate, and that person should be from Ukambani. And so they are blessed from the outside by other people. In the Rift, this region that, as you say, splits Kenya into two, perhaps both figuratively and in reality.
Yes.
There's a problem. there's a problem there because I think there are very strong, powerful forces in the country that would like to cut the legs from under Mr. Ruto. In that, he's a resilient person, very difficult to kind of bring down. But the question that is the big elephant in the room is always, will the election be free and fair?
Yeah.
Will a person become president, or will a person be made president?
Yes.
By the system.
Yes.
The deep state that we're talking about.
Yes.
You know, because we saw on one occasion at least that I think people were clear about in 2007.
Yes.
Mr. Odinga, I think, won the election.
Yeah.
But he lost it.
Yeah.
You know, so with Mr. Ruto can only win in two scenarios.
Yes.
In one scenario where there's a wave election.
Yes.
Where the people stampede to the polls.
Yes.
To elect him.
Yes.
You know, and then throw all caution to the wind and say, this is our man.
Yes.
You know, quite frankly, I'm a little pressed to see how that will happen because the last wave election was in 2002. Mr. Kibaki, as we remember, ran on a morality platform and corruption and against Moi.
Yes.
What's Mr. Ruto going to run? On what platform is he going to run on?
Yes.
To create a wave election.
Yeah.
The other way that he can run and win an election is to snatch the state from Mr. Kenyatta.
Yes.
And I don't see that happening. So that's the three sort of scenarios that I see there, which leaves me where? It leaves me here to simply say that someone else, you know, someone else who is not a regular politician, who is not tainted, someone else that Kenyans can trust, might be able to break this logjam of electing someone or putting in power someone, you know, from these established politicians, many of whom have serious moral questions hanging over them. You know, so for example, and forgive me for saying this, you know, someone like a John Gidongo, for example, if he throws his hat in the ring, it is not. I mean, look at what happened in Ukraine. You know, I mean, a guy who was not even serious, let alone Mr. Gidongo, who is a very serious individual. You know, I think it was basically a comedian who won in Ukraine. So you have these kinds of situations where people can latch onto them and really run with them all the way to State House. That's a possibility there. And in my conversations with civil society, I've tried to encourage people not to look at politicians who are going to be made president, but to look at individuals who are not politicians who might challenge the status quo.
Well, I'm sure that that will be the subject of another conversation as we unpackage that. Unfortunately, time is running out. But I need to ask you one question, and as I had mentioned earlier, we'll discuss this at another sitting, and this is completely different from the direct Kenyan political issues that we've been discussing now, Prof. And it's to do with Kenya's ongoing negotiations with the United States to come up with a trade deal with the Trump administration, that the Kenyatta administration is entering into. At the same time as Kenya is committed to an African free trade area. So, there appears to be a contradiction there. And, for people like myself, a concern that yet, once again, Kenya, which historically, at important moments, say with regard to apartheid in South Africa, and the like, we've been caught on the wrong side of history at important moments. And the question I would ask to you is, President Trump faces an election in around 70 days now. President Kenyatta is on his way out with elections in 2022. And we're in the middle of this major negotiations, and some of the details that are emerging are quite troubling. What's your take on that as a final comment, Prof?
Yeah, so Kenya has been caught, you're right, on the wrong side of history for the most part. And, I chalk that up to Kenya having been ruled by a right of center elite, either a rightist or a right of center elite throughout history. Yeah. That's why, for example, we shied away from supporting our brothers and sisters in the liberation struggle. We saw that. I hate to say that, but it's a fact. Everyone knows about it. On this question of the trade agreement, it's interesting because the home of trade agreements itself, the United States,
yes,
is rebelling against these free trade, liberal trade agreements, which have caused a lot of heartache,
yes,
to working class people in the global north. With respect to Kenya, what I would say is this: when the dam, when the river breaks, John, it breaks at the weakest points.
Okay.
At the weakest points.
Yes.
So I think it is not an accident that that the United States or Donald Trump fingered Kenya as a place to go and corral, to drive through an agreement with the United States, which, with all intents and purposes, for all intents and purposes, appears to be driven by greed on the part of some of the most dangerous, American business interests, including oil companies and others, who are looking for places to dump plastics and to pivot from crude fossil fuels to begin selling plastics to us, including dumping plastics.
That's right.
To East Africa. The keys to watch out there. I'm not saying that trade agreements are bad per se. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that if Kenya goes into a free trade agreement with the United States, it is that agreement that will be used as a template to corral other African states to go into that agreement. So what Kenya does is very singular and important.
Yes.
So Kenya must first of all protect the environment in that agreement.
Yes.
It must make sure that infant industries do not get swallowed up.
Yes.
So I can tell you, for example, if you just open up the financial sector to American banks, Equity and KCB and Core Bank, you can kiss them goodbye completely.
Yes.
So there are issues like that are there. The other thing I think that is people should be, and of course the protection of workers' rights, labor rights.
Correct.
Those ones. But just finally, just to say this here, when you go into a major agreement like this one, you must involve the whole country in our conversation about it. We know that our members of parliament are not up to the task. Okay, have you heard them speak about this issue? No, I haven't. And they're supposed to be the one who are supposed to exercise oversight over the conclusion, over the drafting and the conclusion of international agreements. So I think the people of Kenya themselves must take charge of this particular issue and table the issue until after the election in the United States.
Okay.
Until after Mr. Kenyatta really leaves office. Yeah. There's no rush. There's no rush to do this.
Yeah.
There's no rush.
Thank you. As usual, profound and incisive comments, Prof. I'm always quite surprised by how quickly our time goes.
Yes.
We're already over time. So I want to book you for another conversation next month for you to tell us a bit about what's happening in the US. We'll be quite close to the elections at that time. And US is still the world's largest economy, largest military power, good friend of Kenya, and what happens there has implications here. So we'll be looking forward.
It's very important, John, because you know something. We have witnessed for the first time the collapse of the American political leadership on one side of the aisle. This is the Republican side. Complete collapse. It's amazing. And they are collapsing at a time in which when they control obviously the White House and they control the Senate. So they control, and they control the judiciary. Yeah, so they control very large sections of the state. So we should talk about this. We should devote some time to talk about it.
I'm looking forward to that. I think it is fascinating because the entire world is watching. Coming from Kenya, developing country, we're used to the fact that one leader and his cohort can make a fundamental difference, even to institutions that we felt people have believed are unshakable.
Yes,
we're not shaken. We're not surprised when that kind of thing happens.
Yes,
it seems to be happening in the U.S.
Yes, because I don't think that there has been really a demonic figure.
Yeah.
And I mean that in all seriousness. Like Mr. Trump, he looks on the surface, he looks like a bumbling, unread and couth and civilized idiot. But he's a modern day Hitler. And he craves all the things that Kim Jong-un craves. All these, he is really, really a dangerous man.
Yes.
And what is interesting to me,
yes,
and we can talk about this at some point, is why Christians in the United States, the Christian right, for example, has embraced him so much, and why, by extension, so many Kenyans also embrace him.
Well, we'll discuss it next time, but they did a poll recently and of countries where there is strong support for Donald Trump, and the two African countries that were featured prominently there were Nigeria and Kenya.
You see? And of course, Mr. Trump would, cannot even sit with many Kenyans because, Kenya is one of the shithole countries.
One of the shithole countries.
As is Nigeria.
Oh, Prof, as always, a great pleasure to share your wisdom. Thank you very much. We'll be back and looking forward for your insights on the electoral process in the US. By the time we talk, it'll be politics flat out in the US.
It is my pleasure, John, and thank you for being with me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.